Imagine a message carved into a sheer cliff face, 330 feet in the air. It was placed high above an ancient highway in modern Iran, meant for everyone to see. And yet, for over 2,000 years, nobody could read it. This wasn't just any old carving. It was a king's victory speech, a map of a forgotten empire, and the key that would finally unlock the lost languages of Mesopotamia. This is the story of the Behistun rock and how it gave an entire civilization its voice back. The cuneiform problem. For centuries, anyone exploring the Middle East kept stumbling across the same problem. The ruins of incredible civilizations, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Persians, were everywhere. They left behind mountains of clay tablets, all covered in strange wedge-shaped marks. The script was called cuneiform, and it was a total enigma. The laws, the history, and the stories of these vast empires were all trapped in a code that no one on earth could crack. Then people started paying attention to the giant carving at Behistun. It was commissioned around 520 BCE by the Persian king Darius the Great, and it was basically a massive piece of royal propaganda. The sculpture shows King Darius with his foot on a rival he defeated, and a line of captured rebels roped together. But the real treasure was the text carved around the images. The same declaration was written in 3 different languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. This was a huge deal. It was a trilingual inscription, just like the famous Rosetta stone. If someone could just figure out one of the languages, they could use it as a guide to decipher the other 2. The daredevil on the cliff. Of course, it wasn't going to be easy. First, you had to actually get to the inscription. It's perched 100 meters up a vertical cliff, and the rock face was deliberately cut away after it was carved to make sure no one could tamper with it. Just getting up there to copy it down was a death-defying feat. This is where Henry Rawlinson, a ridiculously daring British Army officer stationed in Iran, enters the story in the 1830s. Rawlinson was obsessed with the inscription and decided to take on the challenge himself. He scaled the cliff again and again, balancing on shaky ladders and getting help from a brave local boy to copy the thousands of little symbols. The Old Persian text was tough enough to get to. The Elamite text was across a chasm, and the Babylonian was even higher up. It took him years, but by 1847 he had transcribed the texts. The physical mission was complete, but the real puzzle was just getting started. Cracking the code, Rawlinson and a few other scholars, building on the early work of a German academic named Georg Friedrich Groth-Taffand, decided to focus on the simplest of the 3 languages, Old Persian. They had a couple of advantages. For one, Old Persian cuneiform used fewer symbols, and it had a special character to mark the end of each word, which was a huge help. Their strategy was to hunt for patterns. Thanks to Greek historians, they had a good idea of what the text might say. They knew Persian kings liked to list their ancestors in their inscriptions. So they looked for repeated sequences of symbols that might stand for the names of Darius, his father Istaspus, and his grandfather Arsams. By matching the names to the symbols, they could start assigning sounds to each character. It was like solving a giant ancient Sudoku puzzle. Slowly but surely, after more than 2,000 years of silence, the Old Persian language started to speak. A lost world comes to life. Cracking the Old Persian text was the breakthrough that changed everything. Now that they had a readable translation, scholars had their guide. They could finally tackle the much more complex Elamite and Babylonian languages because they already knew the story the inscription told. The Behistun inscription had done its job. It was the Rosetta stone for Mesopotamia. Suddenly, history came flooding back. All those unreadable tablets sitting in museums around the world could finally be translated. And what about Darius's big message on the cliff? It's a wild first-person story of how he became king. He claims he overthrew an impostor named Gomada, who had stolen the throne. Darius boasts that he fought and won 19 battles in a single year to put down rebellions all across his empire. And of course he gives all the credit for his success to his god, Ahura Mazda. The story of the Behistun rock is an amazing example of how much of our own history is still out there, just waiting for someone brave or clever enough to find it. If you love stories about ancient secrets and incredible discoveries, make sure you subscribe and come along for our next trip into the past. The Behistun inscription isn't just a carving on a rock. It's a monument to two different things. On one hand, it is a fascinating, if very biased, piece of history straight from a king who created one of the world's greatest empires. But more than that, it was the key that unlocked the voices of the entire ancient Near East. Thanks to Henry Rawlinson's courage and the brilliant work of many scholars, the great empires of Babylon, Assyria, and Persia could finally tell us their stories in their own words.